On to one of the more interesting abnormal psychology topics, and that's schizophrenia. Now, you're going to have notes here, and you're going to use the note sheet that we have. You can use, again, Cami to open this up and actually go ahead and use the Cami extension, and you can make notes on this. You can also use Doc Hub. That'll also allow you to edit this. Or if you want, you can go ahead and print this out and just go ahead and write it in. And then upload that to Google Classroom. Thank you. All right, schizophrenia. Let's first start with the definition while you're taking notes. It's a severe and chronic mental disorder. This is incredibly disruptive. Yes, medications can help a lot. However, this is a very chronic, long-term, and severe mental disorder. And what ends up happening is that you have disturbances in both the way you think, your perception of seeing and hearing, and in behavior. It's incredibly disruptive. It is very hard to have a typical life if you have schizophrenia. It's that severe. And so hospitalizations are very, very common with someone with schizophrenia. And maybe long-term situations in a hospital is typical as well. All right. What are the statistics? What are the causes of this? Let's go through first the statistics. About 0.5% of the population of the United States, or about 2 million people, will end up with schizophrenia. So, or about less than 0.5%, really. It appears usually the first signs of it between mid-teenage years all the way up into the mid-30s is typical of when someone will start showing symptoms of schizophrenia. Causes. This is probably not going to shock you, but genetics are a big role here. With a lot of these abnormal psych conditions and mental disturbances and disorders, you're going to see that if you have a family member, a mother, a father, a sibling, someone like that with this, then your likelihood of you having it is obviously much higher. Interestingly, that there is some science that shows that exposure to hepatitis B or C has some connection to schizophrenia. So it's actually possible to connect this because of disease. So exposure to hepatitis B and C seems to be linked with schizophrenia. And then lastly, and maybe is shockingly, and there's still some debate on this, but the use of LSD and high level use of pot increase the risk. And so that's a major aspect here of it. So high use of LSD and pot will increase the risk of schizophrenia. And you can see here there's a Harvard Medical School study about that teenagers who smoke pot at risk for later schizophrenia and psychosis. Psychosis is kind of a very similar condition to schizophrenia. And you can read on the right if you want. That your thoughts are disrupted in such a way that it makes it hard for you to tell what's real and what's not. And I've had a student come back and speak with my psychology classes about the fact that she was a heavy user of marijuana as a late teen and went through some really psychotic situations, psychosis, and very similar to schizophrenia. And so the concern is that smoking pot when you're young, especially on a high level, on a regular usage, can actually increase your likelihood of having schizophrenia as you age. All right. Positive symptoms. Now, this has got to be kind of confusing because there's the schizophrenia has positive symptoms and then it has negative. But here's the thing: positive doesn't mean good. Positive means that the symptoms are added but shouldn't be there. So go ahead and add that in. Symptoms are added to you, so you get these symptoms. They're positive in the fact that they get added, but you shouldn't actually have them if you are a typical human. In a typical mental health. So one thing that gets added that's positive are hallucinations. You see people that aren't there. And this is like the thing that everybody knows about schizophrenia is that you have these hallucinations. You hear voices. Another common thing that if you understand something about schizophrenia, you know anything about schizophrenia, you know that they hear voices. They see people and they hear voices that aren't there. That's added. It's not supposed to be there. You're not supposed to hear voices, but if you do, that could be a positive added characteristic of schizophrenia. Good. Disorganized speech and behavior. And we call this word salad. This is known as word salad, disorganized speech and behavior. And I have like an example of a word salad here on the right. I'll just read a little bit of it. I'm here from a foreign university, and you have to have a plausity of all acts of amendment to go through for the children's code. And it is no mental disturbance or putnance. It is an amoration. It is like there. I mean, this makes no sense whatsoever. And that's word salad. It's like the words are coming out, and it doesn't make any sense. It is a word salad. So those are added. Those are positive symptoms of schizophrenia. And again, positive doesn't mean good. None of these things are good. All right. And then you have negative symptoms. Now, positive means they're added. Negative means these are things that you should have, but because you have schizophrenia, they get taken away. All right. So the symptoms are taken away, but should exist. Like you should have this, but now you don't. All right. And they are alogia, loss of speech. So like you could have someone who's a schizophrenic and they just lose all ability to speak, gone. So alogia, inability to speak because of mental defect, mental confusion, or aphasia. So in this case, schizophrenia can cause complete loss of speech, alogia. There's these couple vocabulary words here that you're going to need to know. A flat affect. Affect means like your facial expressions, and so flat affect just means like it's gone. This is it. And so you can see like, you know, stressed, happy, anxious, surprised, content. So they're all the same. And then you got the Darth Vader one. I find that funny because I like Star Wars, so I like the Darth Vader facial expressions. I mean, he has a flat effect, doesn't he? All right, cool. So flat effect next, avolition, and it means loss of motivation. Sorry, they got cut off there a little bit by the image. Loss of motivation. And so abolition, motivation. You can kind of tie those two things together. Abolition, motivation. And so like you used to want to do things and you were interested in having going out and doing things or interests that you have like art or playing sports or running. And now all of a sudden you have none of it. So you lose all of your motivation to do the things that you used to enjoy. Avolition, motivation, alogia, loss of speech. We have a bunch of vocab here. And another one, and this isn't all the symptoms, by the way, there are more, but I'm just hitting the highlights. The last one is catatonia, and that is the inability, like you just can't move anymore. Or you get locked in like a position, and we call it catatonic. So you call it a catatonic schizophrenic. And catatonia or being catatonic, you get frozen. And so here's some pictures of people who are like frozen in a position, and they may be like that for hours or up to 10 days. Like literally, like you see these pictures of people frozen. They might be that way for up to 10 days. Or maybe a less severe version of this is like they try to shake your hand and they're like, their hands are like jerky. They reach for it and they like jerk. So they have like lose like control of their joints and whatnot. And so that's another possible negative symptom, meaning it gets subtracted from you, or gets taken away. All right, so positive, remember, means like you get these things that you shouldn't have, and then negative means these are taken away that you should have. All right, that's schizophrenia. Pretty complicated, so make sure you study it and do your practices. Awesome, thanks.